introduction to cognitive behavioral therapy. I'm going to give you a quick idea of who I am and why I found interest in cognitive behavioral therapy. Basically, I graduated with a PhD in psychology of communication, which led me to a major interest in everything psychology. And in today's world, the modern approach to psychoanalysis is cognitive behavioral therapy. And this is what we're going to dive into today. Quick things to discuss on getting the most out of today. I would request from everyone, if it's possible, to put your mobile phones on silent, in order to get the most out of our session and to be completely together. In today's world, our attention span is diminishing more and more, and we're looking at our phones more often than not. If you can move our mobile phones away from our laptops, and in case you are all interested in turning your camera on, it would be lovely to be able to see everyone. And if not, it's okay. I wouldn't hold it against you. It's fine. As long as you are ready to participate, you can do so, either unmuting your button to ask a question, or you can click on the chat box and send your request or your question right there. So basically, I think we're all familiar with working from home with the mute button. I'll ask all of you to mute it so that you can all hear the best out of the session that I'm going to be giving. And once you need to ask a question, feel free to unmute, feel free to write in the chat. All right, so this is also for your information. If anyone would like to have a reaction, raise their hand for a question. And I'll also have the chat box open at any time. So you could just, type in your question and I'll be right there with you. So let's dive into our course objective of today. I'm going to start the course by defining cognitive behavioral therapy with your help, hopefully. I'm going to try to make it as interactive as possible. So in case anyone, like I think it was Nadine, who is familiar with the CBT, you could feel free to chime in and give us your knowledge on the subject. I will also go through two small demonstrations that we're going to call a mini workshop together in order to learn how to apply CBT in the workplace, or like Natalie requested previously, at home. Just know that CBT can be applied just anywhere and everywhere for a better well-being, whether at work or at home. So I'm going to start with the definition of cognitive behavioral therapy. So I would like to first introduce the founding father of cognitive behavioral therapy, Dr. Aaron Beck, and one of his very famous quote, which states that the cognitive approach to looking at people or our surrounding helps us realize how the quality of our thoughts impact how we relate to our everyday experiences. So here is where I'm going to ask you guys, what do you know about cognitive behavioral therapy? Or more specifically, if you know the difference between cognitive and behavioral. So anybody would like to chime in?
Is cognitive to do with the mind?
So yes, Natalie, definitely. Cognitive has to do with your thoughts, your emotions, your attention, where you put your attention versus where you don't. Whereas behavioral, so if I ask John, for example, I see you have unmuted.
The board किधर है?
Excuse me? Hassan, mind versus action. Yes, how the thought affect our behavior and action. Definitely, exactly. So behavior, as as the word states it, it's how we act. It's what we do versus also what we don't do. So for example, avoidance is actually a behavior, right? Because it's something that you're not doing, but it's an action by itself. So cognitive behavioral therapy, in a few words here, it's basically the more modern psychological approach to psychoanalysis, which assumes that unhelpful thinking patterns, they lead to unproductive behavior. So we're linking, again, just like Hassan mentioned, we're linking mind, so thoughts, emotions, to unproductive behavior. Now, according to CBT, according to cognitive behavioral therapy, our emotions and our behavior are the consequence of the meaning we assign to the event and not to the actual event itself. We're going to dive into that in a little bit. Guys, if I could please ask everyone to mute in order, if it's
Mari, you're the
possible.
host now, so you can actually mute everybody.
Yes, I'm just trying to find the button.
If you click on the participants,
Yes.
and then you will see the mute button at the bottom.
So Natalie knows that I'm not very tech savvy. Thank you, Natalie.
No worries, you're talking to a dinosaur here, so it's okay.
We share this as a common point. I think it worked. All right, so let's go back to, according to cognitive behavioral therapy, our emotions and the consequent behavior of these emotions are basically due to a specific meaning that we assign to the event that we faced. It's not due to the event itself, and we're gonna dive into that in just a little while. Now, that meaning that we assign to that specific event is based on something. We all have what we call limiting beliefs. We have embedded them in our subconscious ever since we were children and all the way growing up. Now, we have different forms of limiting beliefs. One of them is what we call cognitive distortions. And this is the limiting belief that we will focus on during this session. Now, what happens during CBT is that we are dealing with these unhelpful thoughts, right? Via techniques. Many techniques help us deal with unhelpful thoughts. It can be as easy as breathing exercises, and it can be as also easy but more questioning, like what we call Socratic questioning, which we'll also dive into during the lesson. All of these ways and techniques of dealing with unhelpful thoughts, they actually lead us as the person dealing with that event versus the consequence of that event to view the event in a different perspective. And guess what? Viewing the event in a different perspective will help us act and behave in a different way and therefore enhance our well-being. So I discussed here, if you notice, what we call cognitive distortions. You could see it as one of our limiting beliefs. Let's dive into what cognitive distortions actually are. So cognitive distortions, as I just mentioned, are part of these unhealthy beliefs that we have that are embedded in us from childhood all the way into us growing up. Defining cognitive distortion in a simplified way for everyone here to be able to relate to any behavior that you might have or have done in the past are actually common thought patterns that are distorted. So what do we mean by distorted? We mean that they are not really true. We think them, but these thought patterns are not really true. I'm going to give you examples of cognitive distortion thoughts. So feel free to chime in if you've heard of one or more of these cognitive distortions. Let's start with filtering. I think we've all had one or all of the cognitive distortions happen to us. We have filtering, which means we focus on the negative and we actually ignore the positive. I think you've all heard of the example of the teacher who gives a white paper to the student with just a dark spot on it. And all the students are focusing, why is there a dark spot on my paper? And then the teacher says, but there's a whole space and area of white on that paper. So this is filtering. They filtered really that one black spot, or as we do it, we filter that one negative thing and we ignore the whole positive around it. Another cognitive distortion would be polarized thinking. So it's all or nothing thinking, ignoring the complexity of a situation. We've all done that, right? Polarized thinking, black or white, this is this or it's that. There's nothing in between. Another cognitive distortion is controlled fallacy. So when we assume either everyone else is to blame or we are self-blaming completely for a specific situation. We also have the fallacy of fairness, and I think we've all fallen for this one at some point. Life is not fair. Why? Why is life not fair to me? We also have overgeneralization, which we assume that a rule is actually the experience. We generalize one little thing over everything. This also falls under stereotyping. Everyone, I think, is familiar with the term. We also have emotional reasoning, which is a huge part of CBT. Think about it. In cognitive behavioral therapy, what we are trying to actually change in the thinking pattern is that the emotion is the reality. What I'm feeling means this must be true for sure. but it's not really. It's just an emotion. And we all know that emotions come and go. And if we are able to control them, then just like this emotion came, we are able to allow it to leave. So, to continue with our cognitive distortions, which are part of our limiting beliefs, we have catastrophizing, which is expecting the worst case scenario. Everyone has done that, I am sure. I'm the first one to vouch for catastrophizing and as well as jumping to conclusions and making assumptions based on little evidence, more on the emotional side rather than the actual facts. We have cognitive distortions of always being right. Being wrong is unacceptable. Whatever I say goes. It's my way or the highway. Yes, Nadine, I think we can all thank you for your honesty because I have done all of that as well. And I think all of us participants in this session have been there, right? So the good news is there is a solution. And this is what we're getting into on our next slide. And there's also personalization. So we assume, that everything is directed at us, everything is happening. We assume that everything is happening to us. We are responsible for this. So moving forward, now that we know about cognitive distortion, I'm going back just a little bit for you guys to have an idea how we're hopping from one to the other. So as we said here, if you look at this part of the slide, cognitive distortion are part of limiting beliefs. What are limiting beliefs? They are these thoughts and ideas that we actually use to give meaning to a specific event that happened. There's an event that happens. My cognitive distortion, let's say, for example, of personalization, I use it, I consider that this event is personal. This limiting belief just gave meaning to that event, and therefore it gave meaning to my consequent behavior. Hassan, would critical thinking be a solution to cognitive distortion? Exactly, it's one of them, and this is what we're hopping into right after this. So what is the ABC of CBT? Basically, the solution-based therapy of CBT is called ABC. It's called ABC, moving back forward to A, B, C, D, and E. So what is the ABC of CBT? To reach the answer to Hassan's question. ABC and CBT is that A is the activating event. B is the belief that is limiting us. It is also based on cognitive distortion. And C is our consequent behavior to that cognitive distortion. Now, what happens usually? When we're at work, let's say when we're at home, for example, we're having a fight with someone at home or at work, something specific happened. We'll get to physical example in a little bit. We usually think that that event caused my behavior. I reacted, I screamed, I got angry. In fact, what caused that behavior, that anger, or that reply, that snappy reply that we had, is actually the belief that is based on cognitive distortions. So that belief, I put it on the event, right? For example, my boss came in and gave me a bad review for my presentation. I got angry. I think I got angry because my boss just gave me the bad review. I actually got angry, for example, because my boss giving me a bad review just snapped out that belief of mine of I'm not good enough. It's personal. I didn't do a good job because I am not good at what I do. So how to avoid a behavior based on such an assumption? How to avoid the belief creating our consequent behavior? We use something, Hassan, for example, critical thinking is done via what we call Socratic questioning. Socratic questioning here, okay, is a group of questions, right, that we ask ourselves once that belief pops up, right? When that activating event happens and we really want to react to it, we stop, we take a breath, and then we start critically thinking our thought, or if you want, we can call it putting our thoughts on trial. What do? We start questioning that, that belief that we have. What's the evidence for that belief or that thought? What is the evidence against it? So am I actually basing my thought or my emotion, my emotional reaction on facts, on actual facts? Did my boss come out and straight out say, you're bad at your job? Or is that a feeling that I had? Is that thought, oh, it's personal, I'm bad at my job? Is it black or white? Or is there a whole lot of gray in between? Can the situation, for example, be interpreted from another perspective? Let's say from my boss's perspective, right? Maybe she has or he has a specific reason why they gave me that bad review. And do I have all the evidence supporting my belief? Or am I basing myself on just emotions and considering emotions equal truth? And this is where we're going to try first doing a quick demonstration together on the ABC in the workplace. So you remember what we just stated on the ABC? It's that A is the activating event. So I would like you, can everyone hear me? Because Mehreen just said that he can't hear
We
me.
can hear you, yeah, we can hear you, Tamara. Yeah.
Okay. Mehreen, I think you have some sort of maybe technical problem. You can try to maybe log out real quick and log back in. All right, so let's get back to our demonstration. We're going to try a demonstration together using the ABC of CBT. I'm going to ask you to go back to an example that you had at work or at home. It's whatever you choose to pick up. And it's going to be the event that happened and how you behaved after that event. And based on what we just learned, with our cognitive distortions from personalization, from catastrophizing, jumping to conclusion, being always right, generalizing, we're going to try to find that limiting belief that led us to that consequent behavior. All right? Ready? The floor is yours. I'm waiting for anyone to give me a situation example that we can dissect together. Who would like to chime in?
Tamara, I'd like to share something.
Please.
A couple of weeks ago, one of my clients said that I was not proactive enough in solving a problem.
Right.
And I was really upset about that. I was really, really upset because I had nothing to do with the problem.
All right. So did you, if we go back, let's try going back together to the belief system.
Okay.
Okay. So would you say, did you take it personal? Did you assume that you did something wrong?
Absolutely. I think I took all of them.
All right. So all of them were applying, right? So for example, you felt you are right. The client must be wrong.
Yeah, and I think I also catastrophized it. I think I made it bigger because I took it so personally. Does that happen? So
definitely. Catastrophizing and personalization are closely linked, because we take something so personal, we think it's bigger than what it actually is. We think the worst case scenario of the problem because it is affecting us personally.
And then as we started going, I tried to find evidence for my client's comment, but they had no evidence.
All right. So basically, you did apply our next exercise, which we will hop into just a little bit later. But basically, what happened, Natalie, and correct me if I'm wrong, the activating event was your client telling you are not proactive. The consequent behavior was you getting upset about it.
Yes, and I was very professional because actually I wanted to rip their heads off, but I didn't. I was very professional.
All right, kudos to the professionalism.
but actually deep inside I was crushed. I was absolutely devastated by what they said.
And you directly linked, obviously, that activating event to your behavior. Not being proactive led you to feel crushed. You actually linked A to C.
Yes, yeah.
So what happens now that you have an idea of what limiting beliefs are and how they shine in between that activating event and the consequent behavior, you now have the tools to use. So for example, Socratic questioning, which we will hop onto again, to question that belief. Because now you know that it's not the fact that the client told you are not proactive that led to your anger. It's the fact that you personalized what your client said. It's that you accepted it maybe as your own. It's that you catastrophized the situation as maybe thinking, maybe I'm like that with all of my clients. That led to you feeling crushed and maybe angry as well. So, Natalie, you're still with me. Guys,
yes, I'm still with you. Yeah.
Awesome. So we're going to use Natalie's example of the ABC here in order to move to Socratic questioning, all right, what I just mentioned before, and therefore moving to what Aaron Beck called the ABCDE of CBT. So we just went into ABC, right? So the activating event, the belief behind it, and then the consequent behavior. Now, what happens in cognitive behavioral therapy? We stop at B, all right? We had C. So what we do is we go back to B. We go back to that belief. For example, I'm going to take the example of Natalie believing it's personal that that client said that she is not proactive enough. Let's take the belief of personalization. And what do? We use D. We dispute that belief. How do we dispute that belief? The example is right there. Socratic questioning. Let's take the example of personalization that Natalie shared with us. What's the evidence for this thought? What is the evidence behind the thought, it's my fault? What is the evidence against this thought? So are you basing this thought that you are actually not proactive, for example, or you are actually, it's your fault that the client feels that way? Are you basing it on facts or on feelings? Which is, Natalie, a little bit what you did. You looked a little bit into that claim and you started questioning it. Is it true? Should I feel that I am really not proactive, for example? Is it black or white? Am I either very proactive or not at all? Or is there a whole gray area in between? Maybe, just maybe, on that specific training, you were tired, for example. The client wasn't in a receptive mood and was not able to take in all of what you were saying.
Tamara, can I ask a question?
Yes, of course.
How long does the questioning, the Socratic questioning take?
Because it could take a few minutes. Once you pinpoint your belief, you have those questions evidenced in front of you. It's just like a breathing exercise, but more on the physical exercise. You know, when everyone says do a breathing exercise to calm down, do a Socratic questioning to actually find the evidence.
So the more I do this, the better I will become. It's just practice, right?
It's just practice. Practice makes perfect. Because slowly and surely you will learn these questions by heart. They will become automatic, right? Why did I react this way? Wait a second. Am I reacting out of feeling or out of evidence? Is there evidence to my belief? Oh, my belief is personalization. Is there evidence? No. All right. So what happens when you dispute that thought? There's the effect. There's a cognitive shift, and therefore there's a behavioral shift. So instead of reacting out of anger, maybe I start understanding the reason my client said that. Maybe my reaction will be understanding that it's not about me, it's about them. And that's depersonalization. And this is where you enjoy a new state of well-being. So what we're going to do here is we're going to try to apply ABCDE. For example, Natalie, you can use that example of yours right now, and I can put the Socratic questioning in front of you. And in order to, dispute the thought with D, and then move towards the shift of your cognition and therefore of your behavior. Anyone else would like to share an example using, ABC, and then going back to your belief and disputing the thought to notice the difference in effect? Anyone is welcome to share, or we can continue. If Natalie is up for it, we could continue with your example.
Hi, Tamara. I would like to share what happened just this morning with my son. Yeah, so we had a bit of scenario this morning. I got angry with him because I thought he was not listening to his teacher.
Mm-hmm.
So in effect, what happened is he cried, and I learned later on that I was wrong. So I jumped into a wrong conclusion, I think.
All right. So what was your activating, if you want to dissect it a little bit? So your activating event, your trigger, was watching your son not being in front of the computer and listening to the teacher?
Yes, that's right.
Okay. And so that led you to the consequence of that was that you got angry with your son, right?
Yes, that's right.
So what was the belief behind it?
I think I jumped to conclusion.
Perfect. So you jumped to the conclusion that, he's not studying, and therefore you directly got angry with him. So let's go back to that activating event. You saw your son just shifting away from that screen, and you are about to really get angry. So how could you dispute you're about to get angry because you assume he's not following up? Let's try to dispute your thought with a Socratic question. So do you have evidence? So would you tell yourself, do I have evidence that he's not following up? Is he really like playing with a game, with a toy right in front of the PC?
Yeah, that's right.
Could it be, is it black or white?
Evidence.
Yes. Is it black or white? Is he, is he either following or not following? Or could he be having just a second of, attention span, like his attention went away, but he's coming back to the screen? Could it be in this whole gray area? Could the situation be interpreted from another perspective? Your son's, for example, he's listening, but he's not looking at the screen. Let's take his perspective, for example. So do you have really a lot of evidence supporting the fact that your son is not at all paying attention?
That's correct.
Right? We don't. So what happens here is, wait, I am actually jumping to conclusion. I just disputed the thought that it's not really, it could not be this belief. So you're going to shift your consequent behavior into maybe asking your son nicely.
Yes, that's what I learned afterwards.
Yeah. Exactly. So what did you do instead? So afterwards, what would you do now that, you just disputed the belief?
Yeah, so next time, instead of jumping to conclusions, I will definitely ask him first in a nice way. So there will be no feeling of anger or upset from both of us.
Exactly. So you saved yourself anger, you saved your son some tears, and therefore your behavior stems out of well-being.
Yes.
Great. Anyone else would like to share?
Thank you.
You're welcome, Madeline. Thank you for the great example. So Natalie, I'm going to go back to you and your example just real quick here. So if we use the cognitive distortion, if we go back to your, your behavior of feeling really crushed, let's take it one step back into the belief of catastrophizing that, I am not being proactive maybe with all of my clients, right?
Yes.
All right. So if we want to dispute your belief here.
So basically, there is no evidence for this thought.
Perfect.
Against this thought, this is the only client that's ever said this to me.
There we go. So we have a whole lot of gray area here that most probably completely depersonalizes you towards him. It's actually not you. It's literally him.
Yeah. And then I was basing the thoughts on feelings.
There we go. Not on facts.
There were no facts, but the client said that there were facts, but I never saw any facts. And it was, the client, even if it's my boss, if it's my client, it's my colleague, I always need to be professional and respect them, even though I don't agree with them. So it was really difficult for me to do that. For me, it wasn't a black and white. There were so many other impact factors, and I felt it was completely unjustified.
Exactly. So taking it from another perspective, let's step into your client's shoes for 1 second. Could he be having a bad day? Could he not be receptive to your actual presentation that specific day?
I actually think that the client was taking it. Something must have happened to the client that day, because as soon as they got onto the meeting, they were in a bad mood.
Exactly.
And I clicked on it, but I thought, no, maybe that's just the tone of voice when you're speaking across Zoom. Sometimes you lose the emotions, right? So I thought, no, it's the tone of voice. They're okay. And I kept on making excuses for sometimes their harsh tone. So I was trying to be accommodating, but then when they said that comment to me, it was literally, you could have picked me up off the floor. I thought, how? And I've had
this is where this was your consequent emotion and behavior.
Yeah,
you crushed.
Yeah. And, you know, I could relate it to some of my clients saying to me the way their manager spoke to them, the way their colleague treated them, they felt crushed. They, you know, they just, it was like horrible. And it turned their world upside down.
Exactly. This is why this is very important to apply in the workplace, because we never know what the other is feeling on that specific day. And sadly, not everyone has the awareness to know that communication is really both ways, right? I say something, but you might receive it in a completely different way. So if I say something out of my own anger, you, Natalie, if we work together and I'm speaking to you, might receive it really in a completely different way than what I actually meant. So going back to your belief, you know, at first you were crushed, you personalized and maybe catastrophized. Now that we disputed this belief together and you saw that really there is no fact that proves that this is personal, that this is about you, how would your, you know, cognitive and behavioral shift happen? That feeling of being crushed, for example.
I still feel really bad to this day, and I think I will still feel bad for a while longer. My shift, I think I've learned a lesson on how to be more aware when I'm dealing with that client, take extra precautions when I'm dealing with that client.
Exactly. So here, since you have, you know, constant communication with that specific client, and you know, most of the time that belief that pops out is personalization, now you are able to dispute your belief directly with that depersonalization, that it's not about you, and therefore shifting your emotion towards what happened to it's not about me, to more understanding. It's about that person. This emotion does not belong to me. This emotion belongs to someone else. And this is where we are able to detach others' emotions from our own and basically move forward feeling better personally because we have not done something wrong, unevidenced.
Yeah, it's just, you know, Tamara, it sounds so easy, you know, when
it's
you're
not.
on a slide.
It is not. Trust me, as a CBT practitioner, even on myself, it's very hard to apply the ABCDE. But you know, there are so many other techniques. There's a technique that we call the stop technique, which is stop and take a breath. It's as simple as a few deep breaths. But saying it is always easier than actually starting it. And this is why we always say practice makes perfect. But the whole idea of the ABCDE is actually driving you towards the fact that you are in control of your feelings, of your emotions, and therefore of your consequent behavior. And this, it might sound hard, as you just said, Natalie, but at the end of the day, it could be relieving, right? I don't need external excruciating help in order to feel better. I can make myself feel better if I practice it well enough, if I learn how to do it in the right way.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I totally agree with you there.
So this is basically the ABCDE of CBT. Now, why does this matter? It could matter both at work or at home with your friends, with your family. You know, first of all, better understanding ourselves always leads us to have an increase in confidence in who we are, in what we can do, in what is our fault versus what is not. It does lead us to a stronger workplace relationship between employees, because the more we understand each other, you know, the less conflict there is. The more we understand each other, the less conflict there is, the more everyone is feeling well, you know, there's well-being around us. So there's less anxiety as to what is he going to say? What does he mean? What am I going to do about what he said? What does that remove? A whole lot of anxiety, a whole lot of time spent on analyzing this person's thought versus that person's actions versus what I was told, and therefore a lot more time to be more productive at work. So, you know, ultimately applying many of the CBT techniques and practices will lead to fewer mental health based absences at work, as well as even during the during work time and during the work hours. So before we move towards any question that anyone might have, I would like for all of us to stay connected with Select. You can follow us on Instagram, you can follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, even the YouTube channel, or visit the website. So here are a few of the links.
Tamara, I have a question.
Yes, definitely. I'm going to I'm going to leave this page open for anyone who would like to, you know, scan the QR code or download the app and then, you know, scan it from your mobile device. Mila, do you have a question? Mila?
Just mute her.
You're gonna try to mute her. Yeah. About that. Yes, Natalie, for your question.
Okay, so it's okay for me. I can.
Sorry, I muted you by mistake.
Fine, no problem. I can try to practice cognitive behavioral therapy, but what about if I'm trying to get somebody else to be aware of CBT? So let's just say my manager. I'm dealing with a manager who thinks it's their way or the highway, and they don't understand where I'm coming from, and I'm really struggling to get them to see my way, and they're not aware of how they speak to me. How can I use CBT to deal with that situation?
So what I usually advise when having a discussion with someone who is not aware of these techniques is always using the I method. You know, you never point fingers. You're always discussing what you feel. So you could have a sit down with that manager, you know, I feel like you were not able to understand my point of view correctly. So what you could do is you could shift those Socratic questioning and have that discussion with that manager. You know, this will lead to answers without them even, you know, struggling in the fact that, no, I do not need CBT. I'm fine. I am correct. Yes, you are. Do you have facts, you know, to give me? Do you have evidence for that thought? For example, let's take the example of that client of yours, Natalie. You're welcome, Ray. Sorry, Natalie. I'm just gonna thank you so much for attending. Thank you, Melissa, and thank you, Ray and Tino. You guys could hang around. Natalie's question is very interesting for anyone who has a, you know, hard to deal with manager. So Natalie, let's take your client, right? For example, he said, I have evidence for you being not proactive. You could be very positive. You always approach the situation in a positive way, right? I would love to do better next time. Could you please share with me some of the evidence that led you to see my non-proactiveness? And it also applies to that manager. It's my way or the highway. Great, Tamara. So could you please, could we discuss again your way? Could there be, for example, that way? Do you think it applies? You know, give them the mic.
Okay, so then basically, I don't use you. I use I feel, I think.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. It's always very important. Sorry, Natalie. But for everyone, in case you could hang around and do the poll for us, it will take only a few minutes and we would be really grateful. So it's right down on your screen. So I'm going to, if everyone got the QR code, I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that everyone can access the poll. So Natalie, going back to your question, yes, correct. Who is that? Who's gonna kill Natalie's manager? Ahsan, Natalie, you have defenders. That's great.
Yeah, no problem. I'll give you the mobile number and the address and the email. Okay, so
you have defenders. That's amazing. So yeah, so going back to your question, you are correct. Always use the I. You know, I think, I feel, and what do you think? Never accuse, because you always has an undertone of accusation. You did this, you did that, right? So we're trying to always shift towards our own feeling and trying to get an answer out of it. And this is how you can use Socratic questioning as well, for example, and rephrase it in a way where you could get answers from them. And you by yourself will figure out their limiting belief because you are so aware, right? And you will figure out, for example, that this person is polarizing. It's this or that, and that's it. So that way you will know that this person has polarizing as their limiting belief. How are you going to make them, you know, unpolarized? Start proposing. Hey, do you think there's a third way to do this? What do you think about that? And so on and so forth.
Thank you very much, Tamara. That's great. Thank you.
You're welcome. I hope my answer was helpful.
Yes, no, it was. And I hope that it's also helped some of the others as well.
Yes, so for everyone, this was really a quick and very simplified introduction to CBT. It's a whole world that you can read about a lot online. It's a booming, more, modern way of psychology in order to deal with those unhelpful thought patterns and therefore shift your behavior to something way more positive. So if anyone has another question, please feel free to ask. Nadine, you are more than welcome. I hope you took the poll, everyone. And I am open for any question if anyone
Mara,
has.
I can't see the poll.
Oh, it's right next to the participant. It's right next to the participants.
I think you need to click on it.
There you go. Can you see it? Or do you want me to share my screen?
Just click on it and share and launch.
There you go. Can you see it?
Yes. Okay, we can see it now. Thank you very much.
Great, you're welcome. So if I could invite everyone to take the poll. Thank you, Pia. Thank you for attending. And
I have a quick question.
Thank you, Wendy. Yes. Hassan?
Yeah, with regards to good, doing all right. Thank you for the amazing session. Honestly, learned a lot. My question would be, when it comes to biases or self-biases, how do we stop our biases when trying to find evidence using the Socratic questioning? So when finding evidence, I think bias comes to play. How do we stop that? What can we do to stop that?
Definitely. Listen, we can never really be completely objective about our own self. But this is where you're gonna play a trick on your mind and put that thought on trial. You're going to give yourself and allow yourself the the evidence with that thought. And then you're going to dispute it with evidence against that thought. So we're not only saying, for example, let's go back to Natalie's example, right? Or to Madeline for that instance. We're not saying no, her son for sure was following up, right? So when she's going to analyze and critically think that thought and Socratic question, she's going to have one side that says, yes, maybe he was really not paying attention. And then you have on the other side, but wait, could it be more than that? So this is how you kind of fight your bias, by actually giving into it, but to a certain limit.
Great.
If that answers your question.
Definitely makes sense. Thank you, Tamara.
You're welcome. You're welcome, David. And Hassan, thank you for attending. So I guess was everyone able to fill in the poll? Are we good on that? Thank you for attending, Wendy. And thank you, Natalie. Yes, for sure. So I'm going to leave the poll for the next couple of minutes for anyone who would be interested to fill it. And thank you, everyone, for attending.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Nice to meet
everyone.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amara.
You're welcome. You're most welcome. It was great having you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. You're more than welcome. Yes, Lama, you're more than welcome. I'm glad it was easy to understand for everyone.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you, Mom.
Bye-bye. You're welcome, Sarah. You're welcome, Noof. Nice to meet you. Anna Rose. It was great to have you on the session.
Thank you.
You're more than welcome. Natalie, do you think I should keep the poll a little bit more?
No, I think that's it, Tamara. Thank you
I'm
very
going
much.
to end it.
Yeah.
Here are the results, right?
Yeah, you don't have to show it. You can just close it. Yeah, we'll take care of that.
All right.
Ladies and gentlemen, if I could just say something. First of all, Tamara, thank you very much for a fantastic session. This was really good, and I think everyone can take something away from this. Not only that, but ladies and gentlemen, all we ask you to do now is go and pay it forward. We've given you 45 minutes of our free time, and there's still a lot of people that could possibly do with some of these tips. So please go and share it with somebody that you feel could really benefit from this. Please stay tuned as well. We have lots more courses coming up, and we would be grateful if you can follow us on our social media, perhaps tag Tamara and Select, and let us know some feedback. But apart from that, ladies and gentlemen, you've been great. Thank you very much for attending the session.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for attending and for your attention. Thank you for participation. And I hope to see you again soon on courses and training together with Select.